Hello and welcome to my channel. This is the second video of a series called Rational Expressions. And in this video, we're going to discuss negative exponents. Now, this is actually quite simple. And again, this is a continuation of a previous video. Now, here's a quick definition. Let me write down here definition. If n, okay, n being an exponent is an integer, that means it's a positive or negative number, then a to the power of negative n is equal to 1 divided by a to the power of n. Now, remember that a cannot be 0, okay? A cannot be 0. Now, here's a couple of examples that I'm going to do for you. And I am going to upload another video where you will have the chance to do some practice problems. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into these examples. So let's start with example A. Example A. So we have a to the power of negative 3 times x to the power of negative 4. Now over here we have a multiplication of exponents. We know that, let me just write this down. Let's see. Okay, so x to the power of negative 3 times x to the power of 4. We know that when exponents multiply and you have the same base, what you do is you actually add the exponents. So this is negative 3 plus 4. Well, negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So we have x to the power of 1, which is just x. Now let's take a look at letter B. Letter B, we have B. This is x to the power of negative 2, and that's being raised to another power. Well, we know that a power raised to a power, what you do is you multiply there. So we have x to the power of negative 2 times 3. Let me just write it down here. When you have a power raised to another power, what you do is you distribute that power to the other powers. So we have negative 2 times 3, well, that's negative 6. To negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. But because we have a negative exponent, now we have to send this x to the power of negative 6 to the denominator, okay? X to the power of positive 6, okay? And that is because of the previous definition that we had, okay? That's where it comes from. Now, this looks a little bit weird if you don't have anything up here on the top. So obviously there needs to be a number, and that number is 1, okay? So we have 1 divided by x to the power of 6. Let's take a look at our next example. We have x to the power of negative 4 times y to the second power, and all of this is being raised to the power of 2. So what is that equal to? Well, remember that when we have a power raised to a power, we distribute. We multiply that power to the other powers. Let me just change the color here. So this 2 is going to multiply that negative 4, and this 2 is going to multiply that 2. That's what's happening here. So we have x to the power of negative 8, because 2 times negative 4 is negative 8, and 2 times 2 is 4. Well, what does that leave us? Remember that we cannot have negative exponents. We have to simplify it and write it with positive exponents. So this x to the power of negative 8 has to go to the denominator. Okay, and there we have that. Lastly, letter D, we have x to the power of negative 3 divided by x to the power of negative 2. Well, when we have exponents dividing each other, what we do is we subtract. So this is negative 3 minus negative 2. Negative 3 minus negative 2. You subtract the exponents, okay? So this is going to be equal to, well, negative 3 minus negative 2. Well, minus, that becomes positive. So this is actually negative 3 plus 2. Well, that's just x to the power of negative 1. But because we cannot have negative exponents, I'm going to send this to the denominator. And I am left with x to the power of, 1 divided by x to the power of 1, or just 1 divided by x.